Happy early Thanksgiving. I am here to help teach you how to make a perfect pumpkin pie, but paleo. To make it healthy, to make it good for your gut. So how do you make a perfect paleo pie? Well, the idea is we're going to get you to this, but if this is your first time, also realize that different paleo flours have different humidity levels. It's the holidays, you're stressed out. Don't stress about it. We will get there. We'll make it easy. We'll make it work for you. So how are we going to do this? We're going to add in our flours. My favorite flour to use for pies is cassava. It makes a wonderful crust. We're also going to use tiger nut. It makes a pie almost have a graham crackery feel. We're also going to be using almond for a nice crumble, and then some arrowroot starch to lighten up the dough, along with coconut flour to keep it all together. So, without further ado, you just throw your flours in. We do not need to be precious about this at all. Paleo baking does not need to be stressful. It can be fun, because you know what? You're using such good ingredients, it's always going to taste good at the end. Throw in your Himalayan sea salt. And because no one likes a crust that does not have flavor, we're going to actually flavor our crust with cinnamon and ginger. So go ahead, even if you want to go crazy and add in some pumpkin spice, a compilation of spices into this. You do you, but just know that, who wants a boring crust? Now you're going to add in your shortening. I like shortening, but if you are not vegan and not vegetarian and you don't want to use shortening and always use only sustainable shortening, you can use ghee or butter. But in this case, I'm using shortening. My shortening got a little bit hot, and I'm not going to be precious about it. So many pie bakers say, oh, your shortening has to be cold to get the perfect mixture. I say, you know what, screw that. No, it doesn't. You can still make an amazing pie even if it isn't cold. So you're going to mix all of these things together, the shortening, the flours, the sea salt, and the spices, and then you're going to find yourself pulsing it until you get an awesome crumble. So this crumble, I'm going to throw into a bowl. You're going to see it basically becomes almost like an apple crisp crumble. You're going to throw that in. So once you get this type of crumble in, what you want to do is you want to add your hydrators. Our hydrator today is Beekeeper's Naturals honey. It makes a wonderful hydrator for a pie crust. Another hydrator we have is both egg. Now, if you are vegetarian or vegan, you do not have to add the egg. It adds a little something to the crust, but is not necessary. You do not have to change a thing if you do not use the egg. If you do not, though, you might need to use more water. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water to here, and you just want to add in a little bit at a time, and just start, pummeling the dough, and make sure it's really, really well mixed. Now, remember, this is the holidays. We do not want to take out our aggression on our upset on our family. Take it out on your dough. That's what it is there for. It doesn't mind, actually. In fact, it likes it a lot. So, this is looking pretty good. And if your dough seems too dry, add in more of the hydrators. Not too much honey, because you know what? The honey will actually, it's a sugar, so it will actually kind of burn the crust, so you don't want that much of it. But in terms of the water and the egg, you can add a little bit more egg, but remember the egg is a protein, so it will puff up the crust. So you really want to rely on water for the crust to hydrate mostly. If your crust gets too wet, simply add more arrowroot starch and little bit of other flours as well, depending on what you have on hand. If you're out of arrowroot, just know that each flour, you need to give it some time to actually settle into the dough, because if you do not give it enough time, what will happen is that you will over flour it and you will end up with a dry crust, even if in the beginning it feels like it's still wet. So the kind of crust you want is this crust that doesn't really go flying off your hands like mine is right now. It can easily be manipulated into, a nice feeling type of grapefruit, right? And this one's feeling pretty good. Another way of looking at the crust is if it, when you squeeze it, if it gets too cracked, it is still too dry. This one still might take just a little bit more dash of water. And if it's a little bit too wet when you roll it out, just know you can use a little bit of arrowroot starch to absorb some of the moisture. Okay, so I think this one is feeling really, really good. And we're going to work on getting that pie crust perfect. So I like to actually take half off and work out about half of it onto the table. And I recommend with a paleo crust is to actually get it into the shape you want and kind of throw it down. You know, you don't want it to be a regular shape, because the idea is that you're going to try and get a nice perfect circle, and you work out the pie crust little by little. This one we're just going to do for demo's sake, but I like to keep it at a 1/8 type of measurement. It keeps it thick enough but thin enough for being able to put it back into the pie dish. The pie dish does not need extra shortening or oil because this has enough. And then when you have that rolled out, you want to take off the top cover of the parchment paper. And you want to roll your sheet of flour, of pie crust on top. And remember, this isn't going to be perfect with paleo. You don't have gluten. But the idea behind it is you want to get as perfect as possible, as much square footage as possible onto the plate, onto the pie pan. And then you can just start manipulating the pie crust into the sides and then roll out another piece of your dough and create the finish. If you want to get extra fancy, you can actually make decorations. And as you can see, I rolled out some dough and then use a fondant cookie cutter to then push it in, wiggle it out, and create a decoration to go on the side of my pie. And as easy as that. Now let's get to our filling. Our filling is super easy. We're literally going to grab the pumpkin. I'm making a double pie today, so I doubled this, so you're not going to have as much of the pie ingredient, but just go with it. So you throw the pumpkin pie puree in. You then add in your, I say 2 teaspoons in the recipe, but I freaking love vanilla. I don't know about you, so I'm going to just double it, because who doesn't love a very vanilla pumpkin pie? You're going to add in your spices. I really, really recommend adding in lots of clove to give it that little bit of a kick and that spice. Then you're going to have your sea salt and your coconut milk. And all you do is throw it on the blender, and it's as simple as that. Blend it up. Oh, sorry, one thing I forgot. You need your eggs. Your eggs are going to bind the pie. So you can just crack your egg into, make sure you do not get any eggshell into the mixture. And I'm again doubling my ingredients. You do not need to do that. Throw this into the blender. And I don't care if it's high speed, we're not being precious about this at all. And as that blends, once it's all blended together, you'll finish and throw it into this pie crust at 375 degrees. One thing to note is that most people overbake their pies and they get that cracking. So how do you avoid the cracking? You avoid the cracking by basically taking your pie out before you think it's done. How do you know it's done? Look for a kind of indentation in the middle, but the sides of where the filling is to actually come and puff up. When you have that, it might even look a little bit jiggly in the middle. it will still cook when you take it out of the oven. So you take it out at that point when you feel like it's just about cooked but not, and let it cool in a place that's not too drafty. And voila, you have a beautiful paleo pumpkin pie. Thanks for being here, and please share your pie on the Hive. Thank you.